Casey. How are you this morning? Good. If you're joining us online, thanks so much for pacing along with us. It's great to have you here as well. My name is Jericho, and I'm one of the pastors here on staff. And I want to tell you before we get started here about two things that we have coming up pretty soon. On August 2nd, this next Saturday, we have a family prayer and worship event. It's in the morning, and it repeats every hour, so you attend one of the 1-hour blocks. I'll be bringing my kids. I'm so excited to do this with them. We'd love for you to join us for it. You can find all the info online. The second thing that I want to tell you about is we have a community kickoff that's on September 14th. This is a fantastic way that you can learn how to step into community here. Maybe it's been a little bit since you've been part of our groups, or maybe you've never been a part of one of our groups or other environments with community here, part of our church community. We'd love to have you check that out. All those events, those two, and all the other things that we're doing this summer, you can find on fcchb.com/summer. That's our website /summer. Now today is one of my favorite Sundays because we also have our food pantry. It's always on the fourth Sunday of each month. That's from 1 to 3 right outside here in our parking lot. If you are a family or you know of a family that has food assistance needs, we'd love for you to join us for that. There's nothing you have to do. You just drive on through or walk through, bike through, come on over and visit us. We'd love to help you out. Now we're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to start our time with some worship. Let's go ahead and stand on up and sing these songs together.
Good morning, church. It's so good to see you today. Let's put our hands together as we sing.
Saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. And I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven, and my praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify, by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Come together, all ye children, bought with blood and washed in water, and sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what he started. Our God will finish what he started. This is my testimony from death to life. His grace rewrote my story. I'll testify, by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is And I remember how you sustained me when you stepped in to save my life. If I knew then what I know now, I would be still and let you work it out. Jesus, I was tossed in the water, but I never went under. You were always on time. Jesus, when I went through the fire, you were right there beside me. You were always on time. You were always, Jesus, when I went through the fire, you were right there beside me, and you were always on time.
I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I could do to let you down. It doesn't take a trophy to make you proud. I'll never be more loved than I am right now.
Going through a storm, but I won't go down. I hear your voice carried in the rhythm of the wind and call me out.
You would cross an ocean, so I wouldn't we thank you for this space that we can worship your name, Lord. I pray that we never forget the importance it is to gather together as believers, God. We were never meant to practice our faith alone, God. We were meant to do it together in community, God, pursuing you every single day, God. Practicing the things that you've taught us, God, to grow closer to the image that you created us in, God. You created us in your image to be good, Lord. And I pray that when we gather together, we can be open to listen, and that we can also just be an encouragement to one another, no matter what anyone looks like, whatever baggage they're bringing into this place, God, no matter what, that we can just encourage one another where we're at, God, and to spur each other towards being more like you. It's your name we pray. Amen.
Hello, you can go ahead and take a seat. The night that Jesus was betrayed, he shared this final meal with his followers, with his disciples. And just before that meal began, he did something really profound. He grabbed a towel and a basin filled with water, and he knelt down and washed his disciples' feet. Now, this was a common practice before meals like this, but the activity, this practice of washing feet was reserved for the lowest of low in society. And so for Jesus, this esteemed rabbi, this famous teacher in the public's eye, for him to take this posture of humility and kneel down and wash his disciples' feet, it shocked his followers. And some of them even protested and said, "No, Lord, we should be washing your feet." But Jesus took this posture of humility, of sacrifice, of service, and he knelt down and intentionally loved and modeled service to his followers. Even on this night, the very night that he was about to be betrayed by one of his followers. You know, here as a church, we talk a lot about these spiritual rhythms or practices, if you will, that are ways we learn how to follow God more closely and understand who God is and what Jesus' presence in our life is like and what it means practically. That's what these spiritual practices, these disciplines, these rhythms help us do. One of those rhythms is service. You'll hear us talk all about different rhythms. I want to highlight today specifically the rhythm of service. And from time to time, we talk about different ways that we can be serving in our church community. I know there's lots of us here who serve in really profound, amazing ways out in our community. And we want to encourage you to keep doing that. It's amazing to see, and I'm so proud of this church. One of the core values here is of service. I want to specifically highlight two very practical needs that we have, though, that we really need volunteers in this role. One of them is right outside these doors. We have an area called our nursery where we have lots of amazing volunteers that care for itty-bitty babies up through toddlers. And it's an amazing way that we can help parents come into this room, have a little bit of a breather, and learn how they can grow and follow Jesus more deeply by giving them that space where we can provide amazing quality care for their kids. We really need volunteers in that role, and so I'm specifically highlighting that. Maybe you love spending time with babies. We'd love to have you over there. Right across our way, we have a big building called The Pier, and in that building, we have different programs for kids, and we have a specific program called our Buddies Volunteers that cares for kids with special needs. Now, I know we have lots of families here that have children with special needs. We love that we can offer that. If you're one of those families and you're hearing that and you didn't know about that, we'd love to get you plugged into that so that your kid can have an amazing, thriving experience over there. If you're listening to that and think, I didn't know I could volunteer for that, and I have a background with special needs, we'd love to have you. If you don't have a background in special needs and you think, I don't know if I could do that, am I qualified, I don't know anything about how to care for kids with special needs, we'd still love to have you. We can teach you, we'll train you. It's an amazing way to serve, again, to allow all families here to be able to have an experience where they can learn how to follow and walk and be a part of the rhythms and community that we have here at our church. Right after this service, we have a connection center that you can head down to where you can find out about ways you can plug into learning more about those serve opportunities. We have some volunteers at our Next Steps table. They can tell you and give you more information about how to volunteer in those areas. Right after Jesus's act of washing his disciples' feet, this just flowed right into this meal that he had. He washed, he served his disciples' feet, and then he shared this meal that every week together we remember as a church with this mini meal. We're going to head into this time of communion right now, and if you didn't grab one of these on your way in and you want to participate in communion, go ahead and raise your hand real high, and a volunteer will come and find you and bring you one. If you don't want to participate, that's totally okay. I'd invite you just to listen and learn a little bit more about what this time is about. But if you've never participated in communion and you want to, know that you are welcome. We would love to have you participate in this with us. I talked about this rhythm of service. One of the other rhythms as a church that we always practice together is this rhythm of gospel, of practicing what it means to remember what God's saving good news means in our lives. And communion is a central grounding way that we practice gospel. Gospel is the good news that God did not just through Jesus on the cross, but since the beginning of time, of restoring, redeeming, reclaiming all of creation. And Jesus' death, God's Son, God himself, is the pinnacle of God's saving work in our world. When Jesus dies on the cross, he defeats suffering and darkness and sin, the things that separate us from a whole life with God. And so when Jesus defeats sin, darkness, suffering, he rises again. It no longer has a hold. Sin and darkness and suffering isn't the end. We have hope after that. And Jesus has the authority to offer us that hope. We can step into new life, not just after death, one day, eternity with Jesus. We can actually experience that hope, that good news, what it means to walk in God's love in new kingdom ways now, today. That's what we celebrate and remember with communion. You can go ahead and peel back that first layer. Remember this little piece of bread, symbolic of Jesus' body broken on the cross, and this juice, his blood spilled on the cross. Go ahead and take it now. God, I thank you for this time that we can pause every week as a community and remember what your sacrifice, where 2,000 years ago, means for us still today. The ways that you invite us into new life and experiencing your kingdom ways of walking in love and grace and compassion for the people around us. God, thank you that you've extended that to us. I pray that we'd really fully receive that and know that and rest in that. God, teach us what it means to follow you more closely. I pray all these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. Well, we are going to continue into our time right now of our teaching series. And I want to give a warm welcome to Jared. He's going to go ahead and come on up here. Jared is our junior high and high school youth pastor, so welcome. We're so privileged to have him for a first time teaching up here on stage, but he's actually been involved for quite a while. I've been on staff for a year now with Jared. He's working with our junior high and high school students week in and week out. We'd love to get to know you a little bit more just before you jump into this message. Tell us, where are all the places you've lived? Because I know it's quite a list.
It is. I've lived in a lot of places. And my parents are here this morning, so they're partially to thank for that. I have lived, mostly all over the South. So I was born in Kentucky. I didn't live there super long. And then I moved to Florida, where I lived for 6 years. And then to Georgia, where I lived for 8 years. And then to Tennessee, where I lived for 6 years, with a brief stint in Maryland for about 6 months, and then back to Kentucky for 2 more years, and then to California for 1 year. So all over the South.
That's quite a journey.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we're so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Totally. Yeah. My family. So I'm married to my wife of Emma for 5 years, and we 8 months ago introduced my son Jones to our family. So that's been exciting and a roller coaster. Families change that way. And then I have the family I grew up with, which is I have 5 brothers, so 6 boys in total, and no sisters. So, yeah.
That's a lot of boys.
Yeah. My mom is a saint. So.
I'm a mom of 2 girls. I don't know what I would do with 5 boys. That's amazing. Now, you're a junior high and high school youth pastor. I volunteered for a very short stint in junior high and high school years ago. I didn't last there long. It's a true blessing and calling if you're called to work with junior high and high school students, so I love what you do. But I remember oftentimes there were times when kids just ate the grossest things for no reason at all, like just for pure shock value or a dare.
Yes.
What is, in all your years of ministry working with junior high and high school students, here but also before, what is the grossest thing you've ever seen a junior high or high schooler eat?
That is such a good question. I've seen junior hires and high schoolers eat truly disgusting things.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, all my years in student ministry. So this is cheating a little bit. Going back before I was a student pastor, and actually when I was a student in the student ministry, at my youth group, we were doing like a fear factor night where we were eating and doing lots of really gross things. But the youth pastor at the time, jokingly, there was a frog that had been hit by a car, and the youth pastor jokingly was like, and anybody who licks that frog gets like the most amount of points or something.
You're not
whatever.
the youth pastor, right?
Huh? No, I was not the youth
Okay.
pastor. I was a high school student, and my brother, one of my many brothers, who was also a high school student, got down and licked the frog. It was disgusting.
Smashed on the road.
Smashed on the pavement. And he won, I think. I think his team won or whatever, so I don't know if it was worth it for him. I'd have to ask him now. And then my dad is a nurse practitioner and was able to get him antibiotics for that night. But also...
Prophetically. We're in the prophet series. He's being prophetic.
My dad was also the youth pastor, so this is kind of like a situation of his own device. It was crazy. It was a family affair.
I'm not sure how to respond to that one.
It was a family affair. So.
All right, last question. In junior high and high school youth ministry, there's always fun would you rathers, and the kids always have fun with this. So I want to throw you a would you rather right now. Or not a would you rather, a particular question. If you were a kitchen utensil, which kitchen utensil would you be and why?
I love that question. If I was a kitchen utensil, I'm going to start using that in small groups with the 6th graders. If I was a kitchen utensil, I would be a whisk because I like to stir things up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you all can take that question. I'm sure you're mulling over which kitchen utensil you would be, and you can ask your friends and family back home after this. Well, thank you so much, Jared. We're thrilled to have you here, and we're excited to hear what you have to say about the prophets today.
Thanks, Jericho. Yeah, I'm stoked to be up here. This is a different venue than I'm used to. Usually the crowd is filled with kids who are half in, half out of listening to what I'm saying. So I think I would feel a little more comfortable up here if while I'm up here teaching, you guys kind of were very loudly whispering to each other. Or like occasionally if you raised your hands and interrupted me to ask to go to the restroom, I think that would be perfect. That's exactly my sweet spot of comfortability. No, but I'm really excited. The series, I think, is great. My heart has a sweet spot for the Old Testament. I love studying the Old Testament, so I think it's great that we're going through the major prophets. There's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from them, even though they are living in a completely different world than we are. And I know the last couple weeks, Stephen did a pretty good job setting up Isaiah, talking about Isaiah and the tonal shifts and the 150-year break in the middle of Isaiah. And Stephen kind of set this series up of even though the prophets are living in this completely different world, this completely different time, how are we going to read what the scriptures say and take what we need to out of it and apply it to our lives? And so Jeremiah is the book that I'm going to be introducing us to, is the next book in the series. And we're going to be kind of going through a whole scope of what's going on in Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a complicated book. I think it might have been a hazing thing that they gave me the book of Jeremiah the first time I preached because Jeremiah is not an easy book to decipher. Jeremiah is the longest book in the Bible, so had to read that before I preached. Nice. It is so long. It is the longest book of the Bible. Jeremiah, very prophetic. God had a lot to say through Jeremiah for the people of Judah, for the people of the kingdom of Judah. Also in Jeremiah, when I introduce Jeremiah, maybe some passages start coming to mind that you're familiar with. Like, I know there's famous passage, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, right, might come to mind. At the beginning of Jeremiah, when God is calling Jeremiah to be a prophet, God tells Jeremiah, like, I knew you when you were still in the womb, like I've known you before you were born, right? So maybe we're familiar with Jeremiah a little bit or familiar with these passages, but we're really going to dig into the context behind these passages. We're really going to dig into the context of what's going on in the book. Another complicated thing about Jeremiah, other than being so long, is it has a complicated reading structure. So we read in Jeremiah, about halfway through, that one of the kings of Judah, Zedekiah, did not like Jeremiah's message. And we're going to learn that it wasn't a very fun message that Jeremiah had. But Zedekiah hated the message so much that he commanded all of Jeremiah's prophecies that had been written down to be burned. Completely burned, destroyed, all of his messages gone. And so Jeremiah had to go back, rewrite all these messages and prophetic words retroactively, and he kind of added to them and embellished them and made them a little bit more. And so there's this complicated reading structure of like some of the things that Jeremiah said he had to rewrite later on, and it was kind of this retroactive thing, and some of the stuff is like pointing to stuff later on because he was able to write it. Anyways, it gets complicated, right? And not only is the book complicated, the world history around Jeremiah is super complicated. This is a super fun part. We're going to learn about world history. The stuff going on around Jeremiah, also very complicated. So the Assyrian Empire was the dominating world power for like a few hundred years leading into Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was a prophet for about a 40-year span. And in that 40-year span, we see Assyria, dominating world power for 300 years, had been an empire for a couple thousand years, is losing their power, and eventually by the end of the book is replaced with the new world power of the Babylonian Empire. So this enormous shift in power, right? The Assyrian Empire was like feared and conquered most of the world, and then the Babylonian Empire comes in as Assyria starts to lose its power, and Babylonian comes in and takes over and has a lot of interaction with the kingdom of Judah. But this massive shift in global power takes place over this short 40-year span of Jeremiah being a prophet. So there's all this global stuff happening around the kingdom of Judah. But also, in the kingdom of Judah, there's a ton happening on the inside. Like over Jeremiah's 40 years, there are 4 different kings with 4 different political agendas and 4 different, completely different things that they're trying to do, right? Judah is the southern kingdom of Israel, right? There's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Judah, the southern kingdom, and they're constantly at odds. And the first king, Josiah, when Jeremiah was around, the first king, Josiah, he kind of had good relationship with the northern kingdom, and the northern kingdom respected Josiah, and so there was kind of this like pseudo unification happening between the southern and northern kingdom. But then after Josiah dies and a new king comes, there's that tension comes right back into place, and it's tumultuous inside the northern and southern kingdoms again. And these kings, more and more kings, 4 kings, like I said, over the time of Jeremiah. So a lot shifting around there. And then maybe, most notably, as we'll read at the end of the book, the temple is destroyed. So the temple inside of Jerusalem, the capital of Judah, the temple was recognized as the physical presence, where the physical presence of God dwelt on earth. God's physical presence on earth dwelt inside of this temple. And so you can imagine for the Jewish people living inside of Judah that this was a hugely significant place, right? So much of their identity was wrapped around the temple because that's where God was, right? And not only their identity, but their commerce and their religious practices, and a lot of their power was wrapped up in Jerusalem around the temple. And over Jeremiah's time, the temple is destroyed, leaving the Jewish people lost, right? This is such a significant thing to the Jewish people that in history, when we're talking about the history of the Jewish people in Judaism, we break it up into First Temple Judaism and Second Temple Judaism. And this is the destruction of the First Temple. And this leads to a lot of things like the Jewish people are scattered, and so this leads to the rise of synagogues, like we see in the New Testament, as being places of worship. We see the codifying of the Torah, right? The first 5 books of the Bible before were just like leaflets and spoken word, kind of oral tradition passed down, but we see the codifying of the Torah, and we see a completely new Jewish people come up. So I just threw a lot at you. There's a lot going on. I'm not throwing all that at you for you to remember. Don't worry. I'm throwing all that at you because Jeremiah has a very tricky task in front of him, right? Jeremiah has to go and speak on behalf of God to this group of people who are in the middle of global power shifts, kingdom power shifts, new identity change, right? Everything that could possibly be pressuring these people politically is weighing down on them. Their identities are stripped away. Jeremiah has a really huge task in front of him, a really huge task to speak to these people who probably don't really want to hear what he has to say. And so all of these things happening, maybe you're already starting to imagine, what is God's message to his people? All this stuff going on, what's God's message to his people? Maybe God's message is Assyria is losing power, Babylon is on the rise, but it's not there yet. Maybe God's message is Judah. Now is a good time to make a power grab. The kingdom of Judah could be stronger. The world powers are weak. Maybe now's a good time to make a power grab. Or maybe God's message is you got these 4 kings and a lot's happening. Maybe Jeremiah is ushering in. God has a new king, and this king is going to solve all of our problems. He's going to be the king that we're going to follow for a long time. He's going to be the guy that sorts everything out for us. Like maybe Jeremiah is ushering in or raising up a new king for God. Or maybe it's about the temple. Like, hey guys, the temple's going to be destroyed, so we need to protect it at all costs and make sure that the physical resting place of God's presence on earth is protected, right? Maybe that's what Jeremiah's message is. But when we look into the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah has a consistent message through the whole book, all of it. But it's not about anything happening politically or in the world or with the kings or even with the temple. God doesn't care about what's going on with all that stuff. When we read what is Jeremiah's message, God cares about his people's hearts and where their hearts are at. So in Jeremiah, I think the kind of best verse we can go to that's kind of a thesis for what Jeremiah has to share is in Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 3 to 8. It says this: "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel says. Reform your ways and your actions, and I will let you live in this place. Do not trust in deceptive words and say, 'This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord.' If you really change your ways and your actions and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this place in the land I gave your ancestors forever and ever. But look, you are trusting in deceptive words that are worthless." All right, so this is the main charge that God is bringing against his people. And even though Jeremiah's message is consistent through the whole book, it's kind of split into 2 parts. It's kind of split into, here it says, you guys need to do better, but it's not too late. Like, you can still change your ways. But spoiler alerts, Kingdom of Judah does not change their ways. So the second part of Jeremiah's book is, it's too late. You guys, it's time for punishment. But this initial, what God is bringing against Judah, you are not taking care of the fatherless and the widows and the foreigners, and you are putting other gods before me. Right? These are the 2 main charges that God is bringing against Judah. He doesn't care about all of the political stuff for Assyria or Babylon or the kings or anything. He cares about the hearts of his people. And the hearts of his people are not taking care of the people who can take care of themselves, and they are not loving God well. And Jeremiah goes on to talk about Baal a lot. Baal is the god of agriculture. So agriculture at the time is very closely related to wealth and power, because in ancient empires, if you had a lot of food, then you had a lot of money and power, right? And so there's this consistent worship of Baal from the people of Judah to kind of ask Baal for provision instead of God for provision. And in that kind of trying to accumulate power and wealth, they forget about the people that can't take care of themselves. They forget about the fatherless and the widows and the foreigners, right? So those two things are very much so connected. And so this is Jeremiah's main message to the people. You guys aren't doing good enough, and these are the things you're doing wrong. You're not taking care of people well, and you are not loving God well. You're loving another God more than me. So later on, we move to the second half of Jeremiah's message. You guys, it's too late. You haven't changed your ways fast enough. You haven't done what you were supposed to. And so now it's time for punishment. And in Jeremiah 34, verses 2 to 3, it says this. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Go to Zedekiah, king of Judah, and tell him, this is what the Lord says. I'm about to give this city into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he will burn it down. You will not escape from his grasp, but will surely be captured and given into his hands. You will see the king of Babylon with your own eyes, and he will speak with you face to face, and you will go to Babylon. All right. First part, God says it's not too late. You can keep living in the promised land. You just got to change. You got to do better. They couldn't pull it together. They couldn't do it. And so the rest of Jeremiah's message is, I'm sorry, you didn't do good enough, but now you're going to be sent into exile into Babylon. Exile is kind of like a triggering word for the Jewish people because their whole beginning and identity was them coming out of exile from the Egyptians, who were their original oppressors, and God had to deliver from that. So they definitely don't want to go into exile again. But it's too late. Jeremiah says, it's over. You're going to go into exile. And the people of Judah kind of hate Jeremiah for this message. So Jeremiah is also known as the weeping prophet, is one of his monikers. And because this message is such a bummer, his message shifts to it's too late. It doesn't matter. You're going to be sent into exile. In fact, Jeremiah starts telling the people, don't even fight it. If you fight it, you're going to die. And if you don't fight it, at least you'll live in Babylon, but at least you'll live. And Jeremiah is so good at speaking this message that actually as Babylon starts to come into the kingdom of Judah and is taking people in waves and slowly bringing them into slavery and exile and all that, they keep going and seeing Jeremiah be stop fighting the Babylons. And the Babylons are is this guy on our side? And so they keep leaving Jeremiah behind because Jeremiah is advocating for them, right? So Jeremiah has this horrible message that he has to deliver, but he's doing a good job at it. So good that the Babylons think that he's on their side. And so this message of you're not doing good enough, and because of that, you're going to be sent into exile. And then the final part of this, at the very end of the book, we see this actually happen. And in Jeremiah 52, verses 12 to 13, they are starting taken to exile. And it says, on the 10th day of the 5th month in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, who served the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He set fire to the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every important building he burned down. All right. So there's the arc of Jeremiah. You're not doing good enough. You need to change. And when they don't change, all right, God's going to send you into exile. And then at the end of the book, they're sent into exile. The temple is burned. The Jewish people's identity is eradicated, and they are brought into Babylon. Bummer of a book. I mean, 50-ish chapters, absolutely a bummer all the way through. And it even leads into Lamentations, also a bummer of a book, okay? Like, it's the worst. Jeremiah, the prophets usually have this thing where there's like a message and a little bit of hope, or like a lot of bit of hope in some of the prophets. Jeremiah, a little bit. At one point, he's like, you're going to go to exile, but you won't be there forever. And that's like his hope, okay? Which it's like, that's the worst, okay? And so Jeremiah, not really a book full of a lot of hope, but there are still things that we can pull out of Jeremiah to apply to our lives. Our lives are so different than these people's. Like, they're, this massive shift in power from Assyria to Babylon, and the kings and the kingdoms, and like a temple that like physically has God inside of it. This is like so outside of what is happening in our worlds right now. Like, this is like, how do we even begin to relate to these people? Like, this is insane how different they are from us, right? They're a part of this kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, that is in such a specific time in history, and we aren't a part of a kingdom in that way, and we just can't, it's like impossible to relate to this. But Stephen kind of set the series up, like I said, with the task of trying to draw wisdom out to apply to our lives. So there's some tools that we can use to try and figure that out. All right, so one of the things that we have the benefit of is we live in a time after Christ. Right, so we get to live in a time period where we already know about Christ. We get to read about his life. We already have our lives changed because of him, right? So as Christ being the best and perfect representation of who God is, we get to look back at the scriptures through the lens of Christ. And Tim Keller, this isn't his idea, but Tim Keller says it like this: teaching Christ from every passage. I really like that. Teaching, it's short and simple. Teaching Christ from every passage. We get to teach Christ from every passage. And when I'm with the junior hires and the high schoolers, something I like to talk to them about is when we are reading the Bible and it feels like so different from who we are or what the world we live in is like, and everything feels like it's changed, there's a couple questions that we can ask ourselves. I'm like tempted to ask these junior high girls right here if they know these questions, but I'm too afraid that they're not going to know, so I'm just going to say them. Okay, the questions that we get to ask, do you think you know it, Layla? No, okay. Yeah, the questions. Okay, go. Oh, amazing. I loved that. Okay, perfect. That was awesome. Okay, yes, so what does this story teach us about people, and what does the story teach us about God? Because when the world around us is constantly changing, that was such a gamble. That was crazy. When the world around us is constantly changing, two things usually don't change, and it's how people act and it's who God is. So when we are digging into these Old Testament passages, we can ask ourselves, what does this teach us about people, and what does this teach us about God? And so looking at this through the lens of Jesus, asking ourselves, what can we learn about God? We can start to figure out how this story applies to our life. So, kingdom of Judah, not a kingdom we're a part of, but Jesus, when he is on earth and he's walking around and he is teaching, Jesus is setting up the framework for a brand new kingdom, a kingdom that we do get to be a part of, the kingdom of heaven. All right, and Jesus often looks at the old kingdoms and looks at the kingdom of heaven and kind of compares the two of them, kind of draws some wisdom from them and applies them to this new kingdom that we do get to be a part of. And a lot of the message that God has for the old kingdoms is true in this new kingdom of heaven. So Jesus spends his time talking, building up this new idea of a kingdom of heaven, right? He kind of is tearing down this old kingdom of like God had a specific chosen people and a kingdom that he was specifically tied to, and they had their 10 commandments and all these laws that they made around these 10 commandments that they had to uphold, right? And Jesus is kind of tearing that idea down, and he's building up this new idea of there's this kingdom of heaven and the rules are simpler and everybody gets to be a part of it. You don't have to be one of God's chosen people. Anybody can enter in the kingdom of heaven. You don't have to listen to all these complex laws that are convoluted and hard to follow. Here's a few simple things that you got to live by and change your life, or that can change your life, and you are a part of the kingdom of heaven, right? So there's these two kingdoms that we're kind of juxtaposing. And in the old kingdom, we see Jeremiah, or God's main charge to the people of Judah through Jeremiah, is that they were not taking care of the fatherless and the widows and the foreigners, and they were not loving God well, right? This is the main charge that God brings against the people of Judah. And when Jesus is talking about the rules, or how we need to listen to the people, or how we need to care for the people in the kingdom of heaven and what it means to be a member of the kingdom of heaven, in Matthew 22, 36 to 40, Jesus says this. A teacher is talking to him, and it says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" He asked of Jesus, and Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." All right, so we see, even though it is completely different kingdoms, and then we see the first kingdom of, whatever is going on in Assyria and Babylon or whatever, all this crazy stuff, but God's message is still the same for them. You're not loving God well, and you're not loving people well. And then fast forward, right? Jesus building up this new kingdom, and the two commandments he gives us: you need to love God well, and you need to love your people well. Those are the two things that you need to do. So Jesus establishing this new kingdom, and we already see some kind of through lines between the two kingdoms, right? We already see how some of this can apply to now. And Jesus, in maybe his most famous sermon, is still building up a lot of the kingdom and a lot of what's going on. And so Jesus gets into the Sermon on the Mount. You might have heard of it. And Jesus spends the whole Sermon on the Mount talking about what it means to be in this new kingdom. And he spends a lot of time tearing down the old kingdom. So in the old kingdom, Jesus says, you've heard it, love your neighbor. And Jesus says, well, I'm telling you, love your enemy. Or in the old kingdom, it says an eye for an eye. But in the new kingdom, Jesus says, if you get hit on the face, turn the other cheek. So Jesus tearing down this old idea of kingdom, building this new kingdom that we get to be a part of. And he kind of is giving this whole message of what it means to be in the kingdom, how to be in the kingdom, who's a part of the kingdom in the Beatitudes. But at the very end of his message, Jesus says, you don't have to listen to anything I'm saying. Jesus is like, I've been talking to you all about how to live life. You don't have to listen to anything I'm saying at all. But if you don't, he goes into this parable, the parable of the builders. He says, if you don't listen to me, it's like you are building a house, but your foundation is sand, right? If you try to build your house if you try to build your life on your abilities and what you can provide for yourself and who you are, it's like you're building your house on sand. And when the storms come and the waters rise and the wind blows, your house is gonna fall apart. And then Jesus says, but if you do listen to what I have to say, if you love God and you love people and you are bought into this new kingdom, it's like you're building your life on rock. It's like you're building your house on rock. And when the storms come and the winds blow and the waters rise, your house is still gonna be there because it's built on a solid foundation. So Jesus is telling us, he's giving us the option. We don't have to do anything. But there's a wise move and a foolish move. And the wise move is to build our house on that rock foundation. And we see the kingdom of Judah, we see that they tried several times to build their house, to build their kingdom on sand. We see a couple things like they cared about themselves more than they cared about the people who couldn't take care of themselves, right? They cared about accumulating wealth and comfort and amassing they cared about wealth and comfort, and they forgot to take care of the fatherless and the widows and the foreigners. And we see that they also didn't love God well, that over the course of Jeremiah, they kept worshiping Baal, and that they tried to buy into what Baal was promising them. They tried to lean into Baal as a provider, and they tried to provide for themselves instead of trusting that God could provide for them. So we see them building their kingdom on sand over and over. And maybe most ironically, at one point, Babylon is knocking at their door, and they try to align themselves with Egypt. We read in Jeremiah that Babylon is coming, and they get scared, so they try to call into Egypt to help protect them, which is riddled with irony because Egypt was like the face of oppression, their original oppressors, the first people who had them in slavery, the first people who beat them and brought them down, and they are now, instead of trying to trust in God, trusting in this face of oppression. So much irony riddled in that. And we see what happens to Judah. They tried to build on sand, and the temple is destroyed, and they are taken into exile. And I don't know about you guys, when I read the parable of the builders, I cannot help but think of all the times in my life, all the different ways I've tried to build my life on sand, where I've tried to trust myself, trust something else, and I've tried to build myself up, and only to have it fall. I've tried to build my life on a nest egg of finances, only to be met with unexpected costs and expenses and have to ask for advances and paychecks. I have tried to build my life on the stability of family, only to be called to work across the country in a state that despite having lived in tons of states, a state I had never actually lived in. I have tried to build my life on my own ability in school and in work, only to fail classes and struggle with careers, right? I've tried to build my life on sand, and I'm sure you have too. And it takes every day an active decision to wake up and decide that day you are going to put your trust in God, that you are going to build your life on a rock foundation. And we see with the kingdom of Judah that this isn't just like an empty warning from Jesus, it's a promise, right? We see the kingdom of Judah tried to build on sand only to be swept away, right? It's not an empty threat. It is a promise that we need to build our life on rock. And so even though the kingdom of Judah is so different than where we are, we get to be a part of the kingdom of heaven. And this message of love God and love people is consistent in both of them, and it is our job to build our lives on rock foundations and try to heed the warning of the kingdom of Judah and not build it on sand. God works within our contexts. He used Babylon to send them into exile. God can work inside of our context and use whatever God needs for our lives, but it's still our choice. Jesus left that choice up to us on how we're going to build our lives. So that is the main theme, or that is the main message of Jeremiah. That is what Jeremiah has to say, and that's, I think, a good way that we can take the words of Jeremiah out of their time and apply them to our lives. So I'm going to go ahead and pray for us. God, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for the many blessings in our life. Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and talk about what it means to build a life around you. I pray that everyone in this room, including myself, wakes up every day and actively makes the decision to forget about themselves and build their life on you, to stop thinking about how they can provide and how you can provide for them, to stop thinking about their own ability and instead thinking about how their life can be changed because of who you are. I pray that we move forward into the day and we have a good day of rest and thankfulness, and I pray this in your holy and precious name. Amen.
How much more
so much for joining us today on this Sunday. I want to highlight a couple quick things before you head on out of here. We have some volunteers that are going to be down here on your right on the side of the stage that would love to pray for you. Maybe you have something difficult going on. We'd love to be encouraging you, listening, praying with you. Maybe you have something you want to celebrate. We'd love to praise God with you for that thing. And as a reminder, our Connection Center on this end of the campus, as you head on out of here, we have ways that you can learn about those volunteer opportunities I talked about. If you're new, come say hello. We have a little gift we'd love to give you and just connect with you. Thanks so much for being here. It's a great time in this series. We hope to see you next weekend.